Coming to get you, Barbara.
Here's Johnny.
Like scary.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Scared Speechless, the podcast where two flesh-eating little boys try and find the words to describe our favorite and least favorite horror films.
We're never men. We're always boys.
It's because it just sounds funnier to say boys.
It definitely does. It definitely is.
Anyway,
Nice
guys, I am your host Jake, along with my co-host Aaron. Aaron, how you doing today?
I'm 23. I'm not a boy.
I still
Not
feel
anymore.
I still feel like a boy in my heart.
I'm a man with big pectorals, very shapely.
I have the body of The Rock, but the mind of Haley Joel Osment in Sixth Sense.
It's good shit.
Oh fuck! All right,
What
no.
are we talking about here? What movie are we talking about?
Well, as it is September, and last year we started a tradition of doing sequel September, which we're
yeah.
a little late on this year, but
Yeah.
I will also take full responsibility for that, guys. I asked
Ow.
Aaron for some time off from the podcast to I moved back from California to Pennsylvania, so back on the East Coast for those listeners. So I had to deal with all of that and a bunch of other stuff. So anyway, that was the reason for the delay. But it is September. We are continuing the trend of doing sequel September, and I figured it would be a fun idea to touch upon 1978's Dawn of the Dead by director George A. Romero, the king of zombies,
Oh,
some
man.
would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, now, before I even suggested this to you, I had assumed you hadn't seen it, but have you
No.
seen Night of the Living Dead?
I have not.
Okay. And the reason I chose Dawn of the Dead as a sequel is for two reasons. One, it's not a part of a franchise that I really want to do at some point.
Yeah.
Because I like the first three Dead films that George A. Romero did, Night of the Living
Yeah.
Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and Day of the Dead. I like those films, but the later ones I don't feel like are worth really discussing. I don't think there's too much to discuss with those. And Dawn of the Dead is kind of a movie that you can watch without ever having seen Night of the Living Dead. Like, were you lost at any point in this movie, or did you kind of feel like it was its own thing?
I was like a bit lost in the beginning because it was like, well, like I kind of went in with the mind thinking like, oh, this is gonna be like directly tied to the first one and like all this stuff. So I like went in like, oh my god, like knowing I was gonna be like confused. So I was like, but then like it just kind of picked up. Everybody was kind of doing their thing, and then I was like, okay, this doesn't seem like I really didn't steer too far from the path if I did like miss out on anything.
Yeah, no, completely. I will say, as obviously someone who's seen Night of the Living Dead, you really can watch any of the Dead films without having seen any of the other ones. Like, the only thing that changes is the amount of time that passes. So, like, Night of the Living Dead is like literally the first night that the living dead are rising up, and it all takes place in one night. Dawn of the Dead is seemingly it feels like a couple months after Night of the Living Dead, because as you said, this movie kind of kicks off, and holy shit, I cannot forget to talk about this, but the first like 10 to 15 minutes of this movie, first off, I think the whole movie is great, but
Yeah.
I thought the first 10 to 15 minutes were spectacular. Like,
oh my gosh, man,
I was sitting
it's really
there.
nice.
Yeah, dude, it's so. I don't blame you for feeling lost because it starts out and it is so chaotic and
So okay, it's so like rushed. Everybody's freaking out.
yeah.
Oh my god.
No, there's like no like easing you into it. It like throws you into the shitstorm like right
Yeah.
off the bat. And the way that it's edited and the way that it's like paced and like how quickly it jumps between us meeting what will eventually be our four main characters, Peter, Fran, Roger, and Steven. You meet those
Yeah.
four characters in the first couple minutes, but the way it's shot, like you almost don't know who the main characters are. Like,
Oh yeah, no. I had trouble figuring that out for a while.
yeah. But dude, the opening I just saw was so good, so energetic, so chaotic. And I told you before we started filming or recording that I watched. It's like an hour and 14-minute documentary that I found on YouTube of like the behind the scenes making of this film, and it sounds like that was like. I know it sounds stupid to say, but like that sounds like exactly what George A. Romero kind of wanted. He's like, I think it was his cinematographer talking about it, and he was talking, and he's like, yeah, George basically came in and was like, we need this to be as like chaotic and like crazy as possible, like, and that's you get all those like crazy amount of cuts, crazy amount of shots, but
They really executed it really well.
mhm.
Felt like that panic,
Yeah.
I will say one thing.
Mhm.
I remembered like none of their names at the end of it. I don't know.
That's totally fair. To
I
be fair,
think-
I have seen this movie before, so maybe that helped.
Yeah.
And also, again, watching the documentary, they each of the
Yeah.
actors like is talking about their character and whatnot. But I made sure to note down their characters' names as well, like because very rare for a horror film, I'd say. But I thought the characters in this movie were fantastic.
I thought they were great, man.
Like,
I liked seeing the difference between all of them.
yeah, and like I think you made a point just now that like you didn't really remember their names, but even if you don't remember their names, I think they're very distinct and memorable personalities.
Yeah, and relationships with each other.
Exactly. Like you have a lot of interesting dynamics in the film. Like you have Fran, the only girl, and Steven, and you're never really told what their status of their relationship is. All that you find out is that they're loosely together and that she's pregnant. And then you have Steven and Roger, who are friends, and that's how Roger knows about Steven having the helicopter and how to get out of
Yeah.
the city and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then you have like the dynamic between Ken Foray's character, Peter and Raj, as like they're both part of like the police force. And yeah, like I said, like a lot of the like cool relationships that they just kind of play around with in the film, and rightfully so, and they develop it so well because majority of this film is just these four characters in a mall together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is. I thought, oh God, I loved that. Something really quick. We didn't go over the details of this movie, did we?
We did not. We also didn't say spoiler warning. So spoiler warning if you're still tuned in. Though I don't know why you'd listen to a podcast about people talking about a movie if you had not seen that movie. Like that's kind of my mindset.
I think
but
we've been pretty clear already about
exactly.
but yeah, we've said that one
Yeah.
quite a few times before.
So if you're a
It is what
new
it is.
if you're a new listener just tuning in for this one, we do spoil the shit out of every movie. But
Yeah.
did you kind of want to go over what the essential plot is, or did you want me to kind of give a rundown of it?
I mean, I could read the IMDb thing, but
Yeah, go for it. Let's see what IMDb chalks this
okay,
film up to.
yeah. So Dawn of the Dead, 1978. I think we said that. This movie is 2 hours and 7 minutes long. I was surprised.
It doesn't feel like 2 hours in my opinion.
It doesn't feel like 2 hours. It feels like, for me, it feels like longer. But I appreciated
Oh.
it because it felt like it had a lot of substance to it.
Interesting.
You know what
I
I mean?
feel like it feels like an hour and 40. Like I just enjoy so much of this movie that I don't know. It just kind of cruises by in my
Yeah.
opinion. But yeah.
But either way, yeah, no, the IMDb rating is 7.8 out of 10. It's directed and written by George A. Romero. Stars David M. Ken Foree, Scott H. Reiner. I don't know how to pronounce any of those names actually. So,
Well, it's Scott. I think it's MG or MJ is the one guy's last
MJ.
name, and then Ken
Yeah.
Foray is Peter.
For a.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah.
So what they say, their like little synopsis of this movie is, or like description, I don't know, is during an escalating zombie epidemic, 2 Philadelphia SWAT team members, a traffic reporter, and his TV executive girlfriend seek refuge in a secluded shopping mall.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that's
pretty
pretty
much
solid thing.
That's pretty much it. I'll give like a brief synopsis, I guess, of like there's not a lot of plot details in this film. Pretty much
Yeah.
what Aaron just said. But just so that we can start talking about like specific scenes and whatnot. And I got some cool fun behind the scenes facts. Yeah, so basically, like he said, these 2 SWAT team guys, Roger and Ken Foray's character Peter. So Roger and Peter, both SWAT team guys, part of different units, but they meet up during this raid on this home, on this living facility, where apparently, and I didn't catch this in the movie, but I looked it up on Wikipedia. So apparently, the reason that they were raiding that location at the beginning of the film is because the residents were not turning in their deceased bodies to the government, and that was like the law at the time, is you had to take sick people and turn them in, and they were just kind of hoarding them, and so that's why there was that raid. But either way, they meet in this like room, and then they're like, Roger's like, hey, I know a guy who eventually we find out is Steven and his girlfriend Fran. 4 of them fly away. They're running low on fuel. They find this shopping mall. They're able to clear it out. They spend a lot of time there. Unfortunately, early on in their mall stay, Roger ends up getting bit. He ends up turning into a zombie. They have to put him down. Sad, R.I.P. Then towards the end of the film, they're doing a test flight. Fran is learning how to control the helicopter because she makes a point. It's a really smart point, really smart characters in this film as well. But Fran makes a point, and Fran is such an awesome character. But
I like her.
She's great, dude, and I love her character arc. But she makes a point where she's like, "You should teach us how to fly in case something happens to you." And like,
that was
yeah,
fucking. That was like, I was honestly shocked about that. Like, that's a really good idea. Like, of course, and they're like, yeah, like if anything happens to any of us, we should all be able to like
fly the
know how to
helicopter.
fly.
Fly the
Like,
one
yeah.
escape route that you have.
Right.
Dude, she has a couple of. I mean, in general, I think the dialogue is great, and there's some some
dude.
other lines that I wrote down, specifically with Peter's character. But Fran has some really great lines. Like, I love that scene early on in the film when they're at the mall, and she's like, she says it with such a so much conviction, where she's like, and I think this precedes the line that we were just talking about. But she says something along the lines of like, I'm sorry that you guys all found out that I'm pregnant because I don't want you to all look at me any differently. I want to be a part of the plans. I want to be a part of things. I don't want
Yeah.
you to like treat me any differently. And I was like, abso-fucking-lutely. Like,
yeah, there you fucking go, man.
awesome.
Pretty empowering.
I forgot why I brought her up. Oh, either way, later on in the
She's fucking
film,
great.
Steven, who they call Flyboy in the film, is giving Fran a lesson, and then the helicopter is spotted by some bikers, a biker gang. The biker gang decides to raid the mall. They successfully raid it because there's like a fuck ton of them. There's like 20 to 25 of them. They raid the building.
It's a lot of people.
Steven gets crazy and is like, no, like, we fought for this place. He ends up dying and getting bit and turned into a zombie. And
that was
then-
honestly heartbreaking.
Dude, all the deaths, both the deaths in this film of like Roger and Steven, I thought was like
Oh my god.
really, really sad. Like, especially
Ripped my heart out,
Rogers.
man.
Rogers was like a slow, drawn out death, and every second it
Oh my
like
god, yeah.
like, oh my god, we're talking about good lines of dialogue and just like good performances when
Dude.
when Roger and Peter are sitting down, and it's so clear that Roger's on the cusp of death. He's like,
yeah.
please don't kill me unless I come back. but I'm gonna try really hard not to come back.
Oh my god.
And it's just heartbreaking because you're like, there's no way. Like, he's absolutely gonna turn into a zombie, and Peter's gonna have to put him down.
But it's like the little like glimmer of hope that's just like, it's about to be dashed, and it's
Yeah.
makes you feel
It's-
things, man. It's really good.
It's so rare that a horror film has you like genuinely like, root for, and care about the characters
Yeah.
to the point where it's like, I feel like most horror films you watch and you're just like, I'm just here to see these people get axed off. But in this film, like,
yeah.
I don't want these people to die. Like,
No, man.
it was genuinely sad to see them die. But anyway, Roger and Steven, they both end up getting bit and turned into zombies and eventually killed. And then film is ending. Most of the bikers have been overtaken by the zombies as well. It's a complete shit show, complete like bloodbath in the end. Some really great special effects and practical effects done, especially in that last couple scenes.
Oh god, the effects, man.
The effects are so good. We can dig into that in a second too. 'Cause,
Yeah.
I could go.
figured we'd like put a pin in it, because
Yeah, I mean we're pretty much
Love
at the end, but basically, Peter tells Fran that to just get out of here. He doesn't want to go, and he says it with so much conviction, like he really means
Yeah.
it. Like in that moment, he is choosing suicide, and then
Yeah.
if for a second there, it seems like Fran is gonna die too. Like she's not gonna leave, and then
Yeah.
Peter makes a last second ditch effort, gets out of there. They're able to get in the helicopter, and then possibly my favorite exchange of dialogue to end on a film
was that one there?
was
Like-
that one. Either that or we haven't done it on here. I don't want to spoil it for you or anybody, but The Thing also has some really
Yeah.
great stuff. But the exchange, but it's like 2 lines of dialogue, one from each of them, but it's so simple and so effective, and it goes off of that like little glimmer of hope that you were
Yeah.
talking about earlier. But they basically start flying, and Peter says, "How much fuel we got?" And Fran goes, "Not much." And they both just have this like, well, let's just fucking see what happens kind
Yeah.
of expression
Like
on
a
their face.
knowing
Yeah.
smile. I was like, oh man.
It's like haunting in a sense,
It
'cause
is.
it's like they're not gonna live that long, most likely.
Yeah. Scary.
But anyway, that's how the movie ends. Movie ends with those two flying off with little to no fuel left in the helicopter.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's the whole plot of the movie. But those special effects, dude.
Oh my god, the special effects, dude.
Can we start with the first one that caught my attention? And it's when the also, sorry I said that Peter and Roger were police officers. They are, as you mentioned, SWAT team members,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
police officers. So anyway, the SWAT, when they're raiding that house or that housing development in the beginning of the film, first off, I wrote in my notes, because this movie, again, 1978,
Yeah.
and when they're about to raid the apartment complex, I wrote, the blatant racism in characters of old movies is such a time capsule.
Oh my god.
Because there's
dude.
one SWAT member that is like the first line he says is like a racial slur.
Oh my
Like,
God.
and he's like bloodthirsty too. Like
Yeah.
he's like going in there to like kill and destroy anything that he could set his gun on. Which is cool because Peter ends up killing that guy.
Yeah.
The racist SWAT team member. But anyway, they enter the building and they shoot a zombie, and the zombie's head fucking explodes.
Oh my god, man.
It's like, have you ever seen Kingsman?
Yeah.
The first Kingsman movie towards the end.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen Kingsman. But at the end, when all their heads are like exploding
Oh
and
my- yeah.
but it's like,
It's like to the song.
but this was
It's
one.
like confetti.
The reason I brought it up was because in the documentary. So first off, I have to give a shout out. Tom Savini. who did the special effects for this movie.
Oh, okay.
He also did the special effects for Night of the Living Dead. He also did the special effects for Friday the 13th, Part 1 and Part 4, which are two of the best special effects driven movies in that franchise. He is like
Damn.
a king of the industry when it comes to special effects.
That's so great.
And he's featured, also fun fact, he's like the main biker guy at the end when they're doing.
Is he really?
Yeah, the guy with the mustache and like he's like combing his mustache.
I had a sneaky feeling that like that might have not been a typical actor.
No, that's Tom Savini, who not
That's
only did
so
these special who not only did the special effects, but also did a ton of the stunt work in the film.
Really?
And he like listening to this guy talk in the documentary was so cool because he was like, yeah, I'm not really a stunt guy, but we didn't really have anybody. So George would be like, all right, there's time to do a stunt. And Tom would be like, all right, George, I could do it. And then he would just like, without any like prep time, would jump off of because his death in the movie, the biker, Tom Savini's character, falls. He's like fighting zombies and then gets shot and falls off a balcony.
Yeah.
Like Tom Savini actually threw himself off that balcony.
Jesus
like,
Christ. And did land on anything?
Yeah. So in the documentary, he's talking about there's like a bunch of like mattresses and stuff that he like was supposed to land on, but kind of missed his landing. And then he like hurt his legs a little bit. Like no, he didn't miss it crazy. Like it wasn't like he like shattered his legs. He like
if you
just
could see my face at home.
No, yeah. He just missed the landing spot a little bit. And it's funny because they have footage of it, of the shot. And he in the documentary, he's talking about it. He's like, yeah. And George came up to me, shook my hand, said, looked great. And then we moved on to the next shot.
Oh my God, dude.
And he was like, in the documentary, he's like, all right, well, George loved it. That's all that matters. And
movie making in the 70s.
Dude, you should hear, you would love this documentary. It's so cool. And
I
like,
don't doubt it. Send me the link, man.
I will absolutely literally just like look up behind the scenes of Dawn of the Dead, and it's the first one. It's like an hour and 14. And I recommend anybody who likes this movie or who just like is interested in filmmaking checks this out because it's so cool. Like, and one of the things that I admired so much about it is every single person that spoke in that documentary spoke of George A. Romero, rest in peace. Who it was made while he was still alive. Like George A. Romero's in the documentary, but he has since passed. Every single person who speaks of him speaks so incredibly highly of him. And every single person who worked on Dawn of the Dead, whether they were a zombie extra or Tom Savini or a producer or an editor, said that it was just the most fun experience they've ever had on a film set.
That's incredible.
They like just hearing that, like how much fun they had while making this movie and how like just like cool movie making shit from the 70s. Like the people who played zombie extras got paid $1. Yeah. A $1 bill. That. Yeah. Like they mentioned it in the documentary. They were like, you got paid $1, a donut, and a Dawn of the Dead shirt.
Yeah.
Which is so cool. Like,
I would so do that.
But like, yeah, like it was so cool. And like they were talking about how George A. Romero, like in terms of the zombies, he was like, yeah, just like do whatever you want, but make it consistent. Like develop your own zombie walk and like develop like what you feel like the zombie would be like, but just make it consistent with every shot. And I don't know, just hearing everybody talk about it and how much fun they had and how great of an experience. I felt
like we got to see that too. Like it, like
yeah,
you know, they didn't all act the same. Some people were doing some things, and some people were doing like other things. Like you could tell it was in like their own way.
Yeah. Oh, and I will loop it back around to the practical effects, so because I do want to talk about that in a sec. But one of the things that I thought was really cool in terms of the zombie walk is after Steven is bitten, he becomes a zombie, obviously, and he has like this like really weird walk.
Oh my God, dude!
Like his like arm is like.
We're talking about the same one.
Yeah, like
it's like weird like that, and then his leg is his foot.
So I was listening to the actor talk about that, and it was
I
closer.
was so intrigued by that.
Yeah, it was so closer towards the end of filming, and he was saying how like he was like getting nervous because all of these extras were like developing and creating their own zombie and like what that zombie would look like, that he's like, I got to do something like unique and something to like really stand out and like catch the audience's attention. And so he devised this like weird walking technique, and like George A. Romero was like raving about it in the documentary. He was like yeah, like when Steven's actor did that, he's like, I think that is like the most unparalleled zombie walk in any movie. He's like, it's so
really
weird.
good.
He's like, I don't even know how he did that with his leg. And like,
Oh my god, I didn't know. I was
Yeah.
like sitting. I'm so glad that I got to have some insight behind that,
It
because
was
I
so
was like
cool, yeah.
watching it and I was like, damn, he's getting paid. Like,
yeah. No, it's so cool.
Must be good shit.
But looping back around to the zombie's head blowing up, it was so cool hearing Tom Savini talk about how they did that effect, and he's like, yeah, like we had this like prosthetic head that we built, and then we were just putting a bunch of shit in it, like blood. He's like, we were putting blood capsules and like pieces of like shrimp and food, like anything from
God.
the concessions table, like we were just grabbing it and throwing it in this head so that when it explodes, it's just like goop going everywhere. And I was like, he said, I specifically remember, he's like, yeah, we had condoms full of blood and they stuck that in the head, so like when
my
it exploded, it just went everywhere.
It's fucking crazy.
That one was really cool to learn about. And then they had Tom Savini and also the actual extra who played the zombie who gets his head chopped off by the helicopter. And that one was really cool to hear about too, because he's like, how they did it. Like, they basically had two guys off screen. They had two guys off screen who were working these blood capsules on the top of his head. And they basically had the top part attached to some string, like some fish string, and the helicopter was turned off, obviously for safety reasons.
Right.
Turned off for safety reasons, but basically, and they added the helicopter blades in post production or something like that. They keyed them in, which is cool because like I couldn't tell while watching the movie.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, I was really wondering. I was like, how the fuck did they do that? But anyway, they just like had it so like when he walked near where the helicopter blades would be, they just yanked it, and so like the top part of his head came clean off, and then as it came off, the two guys off to the side were like pressing the buttons to like squirt the blood out of his head or whatever.
God.
And I was like, that's just so much cooler than CGI. I'm
Incredible,
sorry.
man. I fucking love stuff like that.
Yeah, and I don't know if you remember, but towards the end, when the biker guys are getting torn to pieces, there's that one really graphic shot where the one biker guy is getting mauled by like 15 zombies, and they're like pulling his intestines out of his stomach.
Yeah.
Those were real pig intestines.
Jesus, really?
Yeah.
And they looked gummy. They look like a candy kind of thing. I was
Yeah,
like,
no.
oh, at least it's that.
They were
Wow.
real pig intestines that they like washed off
Oh
and
my
then
god, that's fucking disgusting.
covered in fake blood. Yeah, and like extras were just like they were volunteering to eat it.
Yeah.
They were literally volunteering head over heels to be the zombie in the shot that got to eat it, cuz like everybody just wanted to be a part of this thing. Like that's how they got that's how they got zombie extras. Were basically like a lot of family and friends basically like, hey, we're filming this movie. Fun fact, it was filmed in Pennsylvania.
Oh, sick.
At the Monroeville Mall in Pennsylvania.
Wow.
And yeah, dude, there's just I could go on for days. I don't want this to be like a whole behind the scenes
Yeah.
thing, but there's just so much cool shit about that movie. Even hearing about how they did that, like they built like a fake stomach and then
Yeah.
put like a piece of material between the fake stomach and his real stomach, and in between that they put the pig intestines and stuff so that they could really like it looked like they were literally ripping his stomach apart and pulling out the intestines, which
Yeah, dude.
bro, it's just so gross.
Man, I like cuz all right. So if you're like a modern person coming into this movie,
Yeah.
you may like see the the practical effects, and it may look a little like goofy, a little silly, because like they can't. They
Yeah,
can only do so much back in the day.
it's also
but, like,
almost a 50-year-old movie.
yeah, but I'll tell you what, there were definitely times where I was like, "Oh, ew!" Like, whoa,
Yeah.
like at the beginning when they were like raiding the home, like the time that I saw like it was like the lady's husband and he like got turned into a zombie. He goes and he like grabs her and then like bites into her neck, and like the way that they like
Yeah.
cut it so like it was facing her, and then it was like from behind, and that way they switched it out with whatever they had there, whatever they used, and the guy like bit right into it and just like tore like a chunk off, and
Yeah.
like I was like, oh, like
Dude,
I was like,
when they
that
get
caught me by surprise, man.
bit, the effects are good. Like
Liked it.
it's visceral. Like you
Yeah.
get like this visceral reaction, and I think it's, to me, there's such a, like, yes, like obviously there's times I think where you can tell, yeah, like that's definitely an effect. And again, it's almost a 50-year-old movie. But the effects are so good most of the time that like I get such more of like a chaotic visceral reaction from that than I do any CGI effect. And I hate to harp on the whole like practical versus CGI thing, because there's definitely times where I think CGI really is helpful and a good tool, but I just don't get that same reaction that I do when I watch like a movie like Dawn of the Dead, where it's like I don't know, it makes it feel more authentic. It makes it feel more real and in the moment when it's like actual practical effects happening. Like, I don't know.
It's nice to have you back, film major.
Yeah, like I love it. I love practical effects.
Yeah,
and
man.
like,
No, I don't. I get you, man.
it's
Because
just
like,
so cool.
yeah, well, like I said, I guess it's to each their own at the end of the day. But I feel like it was just generally done quite well enough for me to like believe it once or twice.
No, absolutely.
So
And
like,
I recommend, and we'll definitely talk about other movies of
Yeah.
his on this podcast, but like anything that Tom Savini has done work on, like every time, like the special effects are gonna be fantastic. I've not seen a movie of his and been like he has so many iconic kills under his catalog. Like, and again, like I said, he did Friday the 13th Part 1 and Part 4, and those are easily some of the best kills in that entire series. Which I can't wait till we do Friday the 13th at some point. That'll be a lot of
Yeah.
fun. But
that would be fun.
yeah, anything Tom Savini does is great. I'm pretty sure, I want to say maybe he did The Thing, which The Thing, in my opinion, is like the gold standard for practical effects in a movie.
From the bits that I've seen, I don't blame you.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It's so good. But yeah, so I wanted to sorry, I feel like I've been talking a lot this episode,
Oh man, don't even worry about it.
but I have been looking forward to talking about this movie since we decided to do it. Like,
Yeah.
and then watching the documentary, like I kind of just like fell in love with this movie, like learning more about it.
Yeah.
Also, for anyone who was curious, the budget was between $500 and $640,000, which is so tiny. That's such a small amount of money in the world of movie making.
So, quick question: do you happen to know what the first zombie movie was?
There's a lot of debate about this. I know Night of the Living Dead really brought the idea of a zombie to the mainstream. I'm not sure. We'll do a quick Google search. So technically, this is what Google says. The honor
Okay.
of first zombie movie is typically attributed to Victor Halpern's 1932 film White Zombie. Yeah, so Night of the Living Dead is not the first one. I think it's just the one that really brought it to, like brought it to people's attention, brought it to like
Right.
more of a mainstream platform.
Yeah.
Which,
I'm
speaking
just
of,
so like. Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say, speaking of like Night of the Living Dead, it's kind of crazy that Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Living Dead are 10 years apart.
Are they really?
Mm-hmm. Night of the Living Dead was
Holy.
1968.
Wow.
Yeah, and even the third film, Day of the Dead, if I'm not mistaken, is 85. So that would be what, 7 years after
Yeah.
Day of the Dead, 85. So all of these
Damn.
films took place like way. Well, in the documentary they even say George A. Romero, like, because Dawn of the Dead became so fucking successful,
Yeah.
that like the studio was immediately like, we need a sequel now, and he was like, I kind of want to go make this other movie I wrote.
Yeah.
And so he did. He
How
just went off.
fucking cool.
He wrote a script for Knight Rider and went off and did that.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah. But one of the, I did want to mention it. So to me, I don't know who you thought was the best in terms of like performance in the movie, but for me, it was Ken Foray as Peter.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I thought Peter had the best lines, the best line delivery, the best just performance in general.
I loved his character.
His character
just
is so
so-
good.
So good, man.
Because he's like, at first you're like, oh, he's gonna be that like typical like stoic, no feeling, no emotion guy,
Yeah.
but then like he's
He
not at
gets
all.
into it. Yeah.
Dude, yeah,
You
like
feel for this guy, man.
he also has the best line in the movie, which I don't even think I wrote it down. I think I just
Do you
remembered
remember it? Yeah.
how good it was, and it was, "There's no more room left in hell." And then they're like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, he tells this story about, I think his like granddad or something used to tell this story about
Yeah.
how the dead would start to walk the earth when there was no more room in hell. And I shit you not, when I was rewatching this movie for this episode, I got like chills.
Oh,
Like when he
so
said that
good.
line, I was like,
That was a really fucking good line.
I don't even want to disrespect horror, but that line is like almost too good to be in a zombie
It's
movie.
so good.
The dead, like, there's no more room left in hell. That's insanely.
It was
That's
I
so,
loved it.
That's so good.
It went so hard.
Oh my god! And the way he delivers it is like, he's getting like, it's like that moment when like, it's just a weird comparison. But it's like that moment when you're in your like mid 20s or early 20s and you're starting to do adult things for the first time and you realize it sucks. And you remember when you were a kid and your parents told you don't grow up too fast. And it just hits you and you're like, ah, shit, they were right. And he has that look on his face, like he heard this story about the dead walking the earth when there's no more room left in hell. And like as a kid, you probably never think in a million years this is going to happen. And boom, fuck, they're living in it right now.
Yeah, man. It was I just really liked that to like kind of think about for his character as well. Like I really enjoyed that.
Did you read up what the original ending for the film was going to be?
I did not.
So the the original ending of the film was way more fucked up. So in the
really?
original version, everything else happens the same except Peter commits suicide. He shoots
It
himself.
looked like he was gonna do that.
He shoots himself in the head, and then Fran also commits suicide by sticking her head into the helicopter blade.
Oh my god.
So that was the original ending of this movie, which
That would have been terrible.
I am so. It was
Well-
funny. It was funny hearing the actress Fran, who played Fran, talk about
Actually,
that,
that'd be
because
pretty intense.
she's like, I liked that ending. She's like, I really liked the ending where I stuck my head into the helicopter blade, because she's like, I thought it was such a strong ending. She's like, but I see why they changed it. And typically I'm all for like a really down and depressing ending, and this still kind of has that, because
Yeah.
it's almost like a false sense of hope. Like, you know, they're not going to make it. Like, I'm sorry if you're an optimist and you're like the type of person who's like, oh no, they flew to somewhere safe and they got safe. They did not. I'm sorry to
Yeah.
tell you, they died. There's like a 98% chance they died. Um, but I am very glad that they switched the ending and went
Yeah.
with the more hopeful, slightly hopeful ending rather
Yeah.
than just the two characters killing themselves. But
I mean, and that like just like thinking about it, I was like thinking like maybe that wouldn't be so terrible. Like I guess depending on like how you lead up to it, if it just like you need that like sort of crushing like hope thing to just kind
Yeah.
of to really hit you. So I don't know if you have to be at like a high to come so low, or you know what I mean?
well, it's like so much happens in the last like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It's like one moment they're fine, and the next it's like this biker gang invades their place, and
Fucks everything up, man.
I do think they don't ever explicitly say it, but I do think there's a time jump after Roger dies. Because after Roger dies, oh my God, thinking of scenes that I love, speaking of after Roger's death, such a powerful scene. But basically, Peter sets up a nice romantic dinner for
Yeah.
Fran and Peter, and for Fran and I keep messing up because I think that Steven looks like a Peter. like I keep messing that up. I'm sorry. Steven and
Don't blame me
Fran.
there.
Steven and Fran, they're sitting down to have this romantic dinner, and Peter is like acting like their waiter, and he pours them wine, and Fran's just like, "Oh, Peter, where are you going?" And he's like, "No, this is just for you two," and like he leaves them be. And at first, it's like
That's
a
so
really,
sad.
it's like a really sweet little scene,
Yeah.
and then the tone shifts because it cuts to Peter burying Roger, because this is
Yeah.
right after Roger died, who I feel so bad for Peter because he had to kill Roger and he had to kill Steven
Yeah, man.
in that
It
movie.
was,
Like
oh,
his
man,
two
it was so sad.
his two friends. And but like, and then it cuts back to Fran and Steven, and like the smiles on their faces have dropped, and it's like, and it goes through like the theme in this movie, and it's not subtle at all. It's not a hidden subtext, but like the themes of capitalism and like consumerism and like
Yeah.
being locked in this mall where you have access to all this food and this luxurious stuff like clothing and jewelry and stuff to play with. And there's a lot of great sequences where they're enjoying the mall and they're
Oh yeah, the
playing.
montages. I loved the montages.
They were so good, right? But
made me
there's
feel good.
yeah, but for me it's like I'm watching these montages, but there's always this like underlying layer of like, and it goes back to like the consumerism,
Like dread.
the
I feel
dread.
like.
Yeah, there's this like layer of dread caked onto this film. So like even when there's like happy scenes of them like
Yeah.
having fun and doing dumb shit in the mall and like they're trying on
a little-
clothes, and
There's a little bit of darkness in there.
there's that darkness that like is creeping up
So
behind it.
sad.
And it like it really like fucks with my head because it like anybody, like I'm not a huge materialistic person, but I like nice stuff. Like I like enjoying nice luxurious things. But then it's like, is it all, and it ultimately is not to get too philosophical, but it's all a distraction. Like yeah, the arcade is fun, but right outside the arcade there's zombies outside in a desolate world that is on the brink of being destroyed, and it's so
Yeah, I
dark.
feel that, man.
And then like it's just like the real world, not to get too dark, but like
Mm-hmm.
you're playing video games or you're watching a movie and you're enjoying yourself, and it's like beyond that screen, beyond that wall is like the real world, and the real world is a very dark and sometimes desolate place. And
Yeah.
holy dude, this movie is so fucking good.
I like the one thing that I really like enjoyed about this is like how I asked about like what like the first zombie movie was,
Hmm.
is that like when you think of how popular zombie is in like popular media, like
Yeah.
video games, movies, fucking like
TV
cartoon
shows.
TV shows,
Yeah.
like everywhere, like in pop culture, to say. Um, it's nice to come back to something very early on in that sort of craze
Hmm.
and see where like stuff kind of came from, because I had like feelings every once in a while as I was watching this movie that like I feel like I've seen this before. Like somebody had like either referenced it or like took inspiration from it. Like, I
Hmm.
mean, the pretty much like the entire time I was watching this, I was like, especially with the setting in the
Yeah.
mall, like it reminded me of the game Dead Rising, and like you're like same thing, like zombie apocalypse. You're stuck in a mall. Um, sort of thing. But although there's more to it.
I
But
think I don't know if I misread this, but I think the developers of Dead Rising got sued because of it was too close in line with Dawn of the Dead, like taking place in the shop.
really,
Yeah, I read
that's
somewhere that
wild.
they like there was some sort of like lawsuit or legal dispute over like because they were like, no, you can't make another thing with like zombies in a mall. Like, yeah, no, like
Yeah, dude, that was. Oh man,
Dawn of the Dead is Night of the Dead, Living Dead, and Dawn of the Dead are two of, if not the two most influential pieces of zombie media, I would
yeah,
say ever. Like Dawn of the Dead, like if Night of the Living Dead brought the idea of zombies to the mainstream, like Dawn of the Dead for sure popularized it because I don't even we talked about the budget, but like I didn't even check what the what is it, the box office income was for this movie. Like I know it was very financially successful.
I can
um
imagine so.
let's see if I could find it real quick thanks to the old Google. Dude, okay, this is insane.
Yeah.
This movie was made for $640,000.
Okay.
It made $66 million.
Jesus Christ.
That is
Awesome.
ridiculous. That is such a high profit margin.
That is amazing, dude.
Yeah, and rightfully so, because this movie is just across all boards, I think,
So good.
well shot. There's some really great cinematography in this movie. So like really great camera work, really
Yeah.
great shots, the practical effects.
Yeah.
Um,
And the
do you-
music. I love the music, and the
Yes.
sounds in here were so good. I really like the zombie noises that like
Yeah.
like it was not like you could tell they altered the voice a little bit, like to make it deeper. It's like like
Yeah.
it was fun, man.
No,
The
yeah,
music.
the music, dude. I'm glad you brought that up because I almost forgot to bring that up. I
I
not
fucking loved it, dude.
so good, and I'm kind of interested. And this actually brings me to another fun little tidbit. But there are two versions of this movie. There is the U.S. version and the Italian version,
Okay.
and they have different music in both of them. Um, and that's because do you know or have you heard of the name Dario Argento before?
No.
Okay, so he is an Italian filmmaker, one of my favorite Italian filmmakers. He was big into the giallo films, which are like, you know, a special subgenre of Italian horror. But he made Suspiria.
horror.
He made the original Suspiria, which I'm sure you probably heard of at some point. But yeah, so he did Suspiria. He also did this other really great movie, Deep Red. He's just a really like highly acclaimed director, but he absolutely loved Night of the Living Dead. Like thought it was so good that when he heard that George A. Romero was possibly toying around with the ideas for a sequel, Dario Argento invited George A. Romero to fly to Italy, stay in his Italian villa, and write the script there with no distractions. and
Wow.
every couple days, George would turn in the script to Dario Argento, and he would like look over it, and they'd bounce ideas off each other and stuff. And then George A. Romero was able to bang out the script in 3 weeks.
That's incredible.
It's so cool, especially because like again, like Dario Argento is such like a big Italian filmmaker, and the fact that he just like loved Night of the Living Dead so much that he was like, "Oh, you're making a sequel? Well, come out here and like write it, and you can chill in Italy and just write." Like, that's awesome.
That's so fucking cool.
But the reason for the music change is I forget the exact. I think it was actually on the IMDb, and I don't want to misquote it. It had something to do with George and Dario disagreeing over certain tonal things, because we haven't really mentioned it at all. We've talked about all the scary and gory and violent stuff. There's some funny ass shit in this movie. Like, there is fully a scene
I
where
fucking giggled every once in a while, which confused me because I go
Bro.
from like being like grossed out to like
Yeah.
horrified to like giddy to then like I'm all over the place with this movie. Then sad.
if you guys haven't seen the movie and you're still
Fuck.
listening, Aaron, they literally, the biker gang, they have like a pie fight with the zombies. They like throw.
Oh my god, I can't believe I forgot about that.
It was so funny
That is
because
so fucking incredible.
so fun fact too, the guys on the motorcycle, real motorcycle gang, not actors.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Dude.
They like got in touch with this motorcycle gang and we're basically like, "Hey, do you guys want to like, we're shooting a movie. Do you want to like ride your motorcycles through a shopping mall?" They were
Oh
like,
my god.
abso-fucking-lutely. But they were like coming up with ideas on the set, and it seemed like a lot of the stuff
so
was like
cool.
run and gun, like guerrilla style filmmaking.
Yeah.
I forget who said it in the documentary, but they were just like George, like what do you want us to like do with the zombies or whatever? And someone was like, why don't we like throw pies in their face? and George A. Romero was just like yeah, let's do it.
Oh my god.
Dude, it was like
It's incredible though.
it seems
so
like
funny.
George A. Romero was just like the most like relaxed, like did not give a like he obviously gave a shit. And like one thing you get from the documentary is like how much passion and like
and you can tell
yeah.
the love and care. Like you can tell like there's like that people like put a lot into it, and we're like enjoying doing it, you know?
Yeah. Dude, they don't, and you might not have been able to get this from the film because I think they do a good job of covering it up. They shot that movie in the dead of winter. Like
Really?
freezing cold temperatures. So like, and it doesn't click with you. And then like, because I remember like thinking like, oh, this is like a fun looking zombie. But at one point there's like an extremely overweight zombie who's in like swim trunks, and he's like outside, dead of winter, like in like no shirt, in swim trunks. And then later on, a couple minutes later in that film, that same extra falls into the pond in the mall. Again, it's winter.
Oh my god, dude. What a fucking champion. That guy deserves like 2 donuts instead of just the one.
All of them, dude. All the casting crew, like people were like, because it was a real shopping mall. Like you can't just. So they filmed in the dead of winter, at nighttime, overnight, for weeks. Like, and like everybody, like nobody in the documentary is complaining. Like I said, everybody, all they talk about is how much fun, how good of an experience it was, how great it was working with George A. Romero. Like nobody in the movie is complaining. Like
That is so nice.
It's so crazy, like the little cult following. Like this movie was massively successful to begin with, but the little like cult surrounding that followed this movie, like there's one zombie who's dressed like a nurse. She's in the fucking documentary, and she's
Really?
like, yeah, I've had people come up to me and been like, oh my god, you're the nurse zombie. You're like my favorite zombie in any movie. Or like the one zombie gets stabbed in the head with the screwdriver and he got dubbed like the screwdriver zombie. And like he's like, yeah, like people will come up to me and show tattoos and stuff of Dawn of the Dead, and it's like people fucking love this movie.
That's
Like
so good.
people who watched it like nowadays, people who watched it when it first came out or found it when they were teenagers, people who worked on it, like everybody just kind of fucking loves this movie. And I don't know, I find it
don't
really
blame 'em.
endearing. Like, you know, it gives me hope because you know, existentialism, like what is our place in the
Yeah.
universe and not, but it gives me hope that like, because I don't know, I've had this thought in the past where it's like, oh, it doesn't really matter what you do in life, like everybody ends up dead or whatever. But then it's like,
Damn.
like no, like George A. Romero like made this movie in 1978, and here we are, 40 some odd years later, talking about it and like raving about it, and like it's just cool. Like it's just cool to see that. Like I don't know, timeless work.
It feels like such a pure, like, non controversial in any way, like making of like a good film, you know?
Oh, dude, I would have been so heartbroken if like
It turns
bad
out
shit-
George A. Romero like beat the shit out of every single like one of the
yeah,
people.
like if like they would have been abused or miserable, and then it would have been like to be fair, there are movies I've watched like where like they talk about the filming experience and they're like, yeah, it was pretty much miserable, but we made a great movie. But like it is so much cooler to like be like, oh, everybody got a great time making this project. Like, and like you said, you feel the passion while you're watching it. Like, I don't know, so much good shit in this movie. Not sure if you have a favorite scene. I've been meaning to start doing that when we record these, like ask favorite and least favorite scenes, but
Yeah.
I'm having like a hard time. You know what is kind of my favorite scene, and
What's
it's
that?
so low key. I think it's when it's nothing crazy. Like if I had to go like the most like the one that I like is so memorable, it's like when the biker is getting his guts ripped out, because
Yeah.
it's one of the best effects in the movie and it's just so like cemented in my brain.
It
But
was
my
icky.
is so icky and it's so it's so visceral. Sorry guys, I use that word a lot, but it's the whole exchange, and I guess it's more of a sequence than a specific one scene in a room, but it's the whole like leading up to Roger's death. Like
Oh,
the
man.
scene where he's like Peter, they're all in the other room except for Raj, and Raj is just getting sicker and sicker, and like he's like losing his mind a little bit, and he's like, "We whipped him, didn't we? Didn't we whip him?"
Oh,
And like
God. This
and
is
like
so sad.
yeah, and Peter just responds back in like the most hollow voice, and he's like, yeah, we whipped him, buddy. Whipped him real good. And like you just see the look on Raj's face, and it's like I don't, it always like one thing that always gets me is like seeing characters in movies or shows that know that they're about to die.
Yeah.
Like
They kind of have to come to terms with it, and that's such a journey that like I felt like they did so much in this movie in terms of like building their characters and stuff like that, but that was definitely a very like impactful like part of the movie. Like
Yeah.
it was just man,
and it was
I didn't
cool
expect it to
too.
get that deep, like for me.
Right? Like you go into the zombie movie and you're like, I don't really expect to give a shit about the characters that much, but
Right.
you watch this and you're just like, I kind of love all these people. Like I don't want any of them to die. But it's not even just that. It's like, you know, obviously I mentioned it earlier when Roger and Peter have that exchange where he's like, don't kill me until I come back, but I'm going to try not to come back, which is, again, it's just, we talked about it, heartbreaking
Yeah,
scene.
man.
But
I was
when
just thinking about that.
when Raj and Peter, or when Roger is finally dead and is starting to come back as a zombie, and Peter just like kind of has this like heartbroken look on his face, like, man, this was his friend, like this was his buddy. And it's not like I hate to say this because it's gonna make it sound like real world deaths don't hurt that much, but like in real life, if you lose someone, it's heartbreaking, it's emotionally destructive, like it can completely ruin a person. but typically you still have other people in your life, hopefully, that you can go to and are supportive and whatnot.
Yeah.
In this movie, you're in a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, dude.
There are
brutal.
there are four of you, and you're in charge now of putting one of those four people down. And it was cool hearing the actor who played Roger talk about that scene where he's like, when I was like starting to, when Roger first wakes up, I kind of wanted to like make it come off as like there was still a little bit of humanity left in him. So he has this like look on his face that like you don't see in the other zombies, and he's like, and I don't like become emotionless and like that full zombie until I fully sit up. And it was just cool hearing him like the thought process of an actor and like what they were trying to convey, and it was just cool. But anyway,
that is very cool. I love that. I love hearing about that sort of stuff. It makes me like enjoy it more,
yeah. It's cool hearing what's going on in their head, and like especially for such an old movie to like hear what they were thinking at the time. But anyway, that whole sequence with Raj's death is my favorite. Do you have a favorite scene in the movie?
It's so hard to say. I mean, I kind of like was taken aback when Raj got like bit in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, because that was like a bit of an intense thing. Actually, you know what? I liked the one where Raj and Peter are like, well, it's a mall. Let's see what they got. And then they were just like going all the way through and like exploring everything. And it was just like, it was kind of fun because it was like a wholesome thing for like each other. Like I felt like they had such a good relationship, and like by the end of it, it just like, it really got to me. I was like, damn.
Yeah,
really impacted me. But seeing that, I feel like was probably one of my favorite parts.
Good stuff. Yeah, great scene. Like again, like the dynamic between those two. I like that we both kind of like had like our favorite scenes were involved those two characters, because it's just so good, and the acting is just top notch, and especially I just think Ken Foray is so good in this movie. Yeah, they're all just so talented.
It's so good.
Love that opening. I would ask you your least favorite scene, but I don't know if I personally have like a scene that I don't like in this movie.
Right. I don't think there's anything that really sticks out for me that I'm not like.
There is it's not even a specific scene. There's just a couple times where it's like the severity of the zombies is not exactly captured, because sometimes you see a horde of zombies.
They did kind of make it look kind of super easy to.
Well, the thing is it's the inconsistency, because sometimes you see a group of zombies and they're just like bobbing and weaving and zigging and zagging through the zombies like they're like an NFL running back. And then other times you see a horde of zombies and it's like, if like one of them gets their hands on you, you're toast, because they're just going to swarm your ass.
Yeah. I get that.
That's the only thing where I'm like a little bit like it takes me out of it just a hair, to where I'm like, that I feel like that could have been executed just a tiny bit better, or at least been a little more consistent. But I mean, the zombies are still a threat in the movie. Like, it's never like I don't feel like they're a threat, but there are times where I'm like, they're just kind of like running around them.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have too much left to say. I mean, we're at a little over the hour mark, but I feel like I've covered a lot.
I'm pretty good, not for nothing.
Let's see if there was any. I'll check the IMDb page. I'm trying to recall the documentary and if there's any really cool tidbits that I missed out on. I think I covered a lot of like the special effects ones, and one thing that I thought was interesting was just Tom Savini talking about like the color that he chose for the zombies, because Night of the Living Dead was in black and white, so they didn't have to worry about makeup,
right?
Because they're all gonna look, the same anyway.
Yeah.
So he decided to go with a gray face paint, And he's like, and it didn't even work out the way I wanted it to, because sometimes they looked blue and sometimes they
Yeah,
looked
dude.
green. And I was like, I don't know, it kind of adds to it that they all look a little bit different. If they all looked gray, it'd be a little too samey, but I like that sometimes it looks a little blue and sometimes it looks a little green, and it kind of adds a little bit of diversity to the visual department.
It definitely made me giggle, I won't lie.
This movie was almost an X-rated film for
Really?
the gore and violence, which, yeah, I get.
I could
There's a
see
lot
that,
of
yeah.
there's a lot of horrific stuff in the film. Trying to see if there's any big ones.
Blood and guts.
Similar to the Real Biker Gang, the local National Guard, the scene when they're flying over Pennsylvania, and you see like all of the people outside and like they're cooking up food and there's like dogs and search parties and stuff. All locals who brought their own weapons, like local hunters,
Really?
local National Guard.
How about
Again, just cool like stuff like about old filmmaking. Like nowadays that would never happen. Like using like the actual National Guard. Like they would just cast extras in it.
Yeah.
Which is like it's fine. Like it doesn't ruin the immersion, but it's just cool that like like a bunch of people just came together to make a fucking movie. Like it's cool. I think that's really it. Oh, this is funny. Scott H. Ringer is 5'7", and Ken Foray is 6'5".
Damn.
And I guess they have banter in the film when they're in the trucks and they're joking about each other's height, and that was completely improvised.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah.
Man.
Oh, speaking of improvisation, I did want to mark this because I thought it was funny. The scene when Roger slides down the
Dude,
escalator, completely
it made me-
improvised.
Really?
Yeah.
I
'Cause in the-
wanted to do that so badly.
in the script, he was just supposed to run down the escalator. But then he like right before they started filming the take, he was like, George, can I do something like a little more interesting? And George was like, what are you thinking? And he's like, what if I just like slide down the railing thing?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, fucking do it. Like
It's so fucking funny.
so cool. But
It's so good.
yeah. Do you want to get into scores and next week's recommendation?
Sure.
All right. Did you want to go first, or did you want to?
I will go first. So
Okay.
I'm giving this movie, and I'm thinking about it because like not only did I think it was really really good, but like also like I wouldn't mind watching this literally after we're done, like with this
Oh,
episode. Like
I would absolutely watch this
I would
again
watch
right
this
now.
anytime.
Yeah.
So that being said, I'd say I'd give this 9 gray/blue/green face paints out of 10.
I can respect a 9 out of 10. I let's go. That's got to be your second highest score, or one of them.
One of them, I think.
What did you rate the original Halloween? Because you didn't give it a 10.
I think that was like an 8.
It was like I know you gave Texas Chainsaw like an 8.5 out of 10. I just couldn't remember Halloween. I know you gave Trick or Treat
I
a
want to
10.
change that.
I know you gave Trick or
We
Treat a
can
10.
revisit that later.
Well, yeah, we could definitely revisit that at some point. Maybe if we ever decide to do all the Texas Chainsaws and whatnot.
Yeah.
Which that sounds like a lot. But for me, I am gonna give Dawn of the Dead 1978 9.7.
Damn.
9.7 Rogers out of 10 because I love Roger.
They really should have been aiming for that 0.3.
I don't. Every like so much of me wants to give this movie a 10,
Yeah.
but I just don't.
It's hard to
Think
give
it's-
away.
It's not even like, oh, there's like this little thing that's taking a 0.3 off.
Yeah.
I'm the type of person like when I watch a movie, like, and I feel like everybody has their own version of what a 10 out of 10 is. And when I watch this movie, I'm like, this is a near perfect movie. Like, there's not much I would change about this. It just doesn't feel like a 10. So 9.7 is my score.
I feel you.
So I think that I don't even need to do math for that one on my calculator. I think that's a 9.35 combined score out of
Nice.
10, which is definitely one of our highest. And I'm so glad that you enjoyed this because I was so worried that I was gonna come in hot and be
I
like,
super enjoyed it.
yeah,
man.
I'm so glad because I was like, I hope I don't come in and I'm like, I fucking love this movie. It's so cool. And then Aaron's like, yeah, it was all
I
right.
hate this movie.
That would hurt. I don't
If
think
it's
there's
not a
been
10,
a
it's a 0.
I don't think there's been a movie that one of us loves and the other hates. Not yet, at least. I think our
Wasn't it, like,
biggest,
Monster House.
even then, I gave that movie like a 7 out of 10 or a 6 out of 10, which is a good score.
It's all right.
Everybody
It's not
gave me
passing.
the few people who listen to this podcast gave me shit for my score of fucking Monster House, and I'll never live it down. But maybe
Shout out to my older sister.
yeah. Yeah. I think your older sister hates me now because of that.
No, that's fine.
Sorry, guys.
You'll survive.
Monster House, not that good. No, it's fine. I'll watch it again this
Love
year.
it.
I
It's
will
so
watch
good,
it
it's
again in
blasphemy.
October, and then on one of our October episodes, I will let you guys know if my thoughts have changed on it.
Yeah, we'll do that.
But that being said, you should do the same for Texas Chainsaw.
Yeah.
You should watch it again this October and then be like, just let me know if you enjoyed it more or less.
Yeah.
But because that's a movie I think I mentioned in that episode that grew on me over time.
I think. Yeah.
But yeah, so that is, since we started late, that is unfortunately the only movie that we're doing in September. So it's the end of sequel September, but
Yep.
I don't want to spoil it for you guys, but we're going to make it up in October.
Yeah,
We
it's
got
gonna be
some
pretty cool.
we got some stuff in the works is all I'm going to say.
I think it's gonna be pretty cool. I think it's gonna be pretty cool.
It's going to be dope. But that being said, our next week's episode is the start of October, our special spooky Halloween season month.
Oh yeah, huh?
And the first movie that we are doing is
Is
Coraline.
oh my god, I did not know that.
We are doing Coraline. Well, okay, to be fair, guys, he did know that we were doing it. He maybe didn't know that we were doing it as the next one, but it was
Wasn't
discussed.
entirely sure.
No, we actually literally today as we're recording this, I was driving to work and had texted Aaron and was like, "Hey man, like what other movies do you want to do in October?" And literally as I was driving, I was like, you know, people seem to like the Monster House. Like maybe if we did like another family friendly one. And I was like,
Yeah.
I know we discussed doing Coraline
Yeah.
last year and went with Monster House instead. So maybe Coraline, I'm thinking. And then you texted me at that moment and was like, hey, we should do Coraline. And I was
Yeah,
like,
man.
match made in heaven. Let's go.
I was
so,
looking
yeah.
through my Halloween movies to watch every year list, and I saw that. I was like, "Oh, we should definitely do that." I'm excited.
I think all the movies that we have picked for October this year are all great October horror films.
Bangers! I can't wait to see what they are.
Yeah, so stay tuned, guys, for our next week's episode. We release episodes Mondays. Yeah, Mondays. So
Yep.
Monday, October 2nd, Coraline will be coming out. So if you don't want to be spoiled, check out Coraline. We will be spoiling that movie heavily.
Super spoil.
I look forward to that. I haven't seen that movie in probably 10 years. So
Neither have I.
I'm
Just kidding.
excited. I'm excited to revisit that one. But yeah, with that being said, that's it for today's episode. We're gonna do some plugs now. You could follow me on my personal Instagram at BoozJacob, spelled BOOSJACOB. You can also follow me on YouTube at Former Film Student, where I do TV and movie-related content. I will also be doing a lot of horror-related content this October for my channel, so definitely stay tuned for that if you follow me over on my channel. I forgot to mention, you can follow this podcast anywhere that you find your podcast: Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube. Any of those 3 platforms, you can find this podcast at Scared Speechless. You can also follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Scared Speechless. I don't really post on the Facebook page a lot, so just don't even worry about that. Follow us on our Instagram page, Scared Speechless, if you're interested in following us on social media. But that is it for me.
And then me, I have, I really just have an Instagram. It's Vixatic. That's VIXATIC. Don't worry about it. What it means. I don't have like that much like I don't know. I just have personal stuff on there right now. See what we do with it later. But yeah, let me know you're from the show, and you know you can be part of the family.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. We don't have a ton of listeners, so if you
Yeah.
reach out to us either on our personal Instagrams about the show or on the Instagram for the podcast,
Yeah.
there's a 100% chance that we will respond to you. Yeah, and let us know what you think of the show. Some movies that you'd like to see us talk about. We'd love recommendations. We want as many people to listen to this as possible. So if there's stuff that you guys want to hear us talk about, let us know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's it, right?
I believe so.
All right, guys. Last note, throw this podcast on whenever you get a free chance. The episodes range anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour usually. Throw us on your morning or your long drives into work or from home. I've been listening to a ton of podcasts on my way home from work. It's a nice way to kind of kill the time on my drive. Throw us on when you're on at the gym, getting your pump on. I mean, what better way to pump those muscles than listening to two really intelligent, handsome stud men talk about horror films? You know, what better way?
What better way to get swole than to listen to Jake and Aaron on your device,
On your ear device.
on your on your Magic Square.
And you know what? If you are listening to us, take the headphones off and let the
Yeah.
world hear us.
Yeah, throw us on when you're on your short helicopter rides to God knows where.
Yeah, when you're on your trips to the local mall to avoid a zombie apocalypse, we are some great background audio.
Fantastic.
All right, guys. So we will see you on the next episode where, again, last time we are discussing Coraline. But that is it for today. Goodbye.
Goodbye.